My name is Tom Llewellyn. I'm the interim executive director at Shareable and have been co-coordinating the Library of Things collab for the past year almost. I want to welcome everybody in and joining us for another one of these sessions. This is, I think, session 17. For those of you that have been with us through the last many months, thank you for sticking with us. Those that might be just coming in for a first session, know that you are coming into a group that has been working through um, how to grow and support and strengthen libraries of things for many months now. All of the recordings from our previous sessions are available on Canvas. And Allison, actually, can you go and grab the link to Canvas off of our website, off of the Library of Things collab? Thank you. And the recording of this session will also be going up on Canvas. We'll be producing a written transcript, which will also be translated into Spanish. We also will be releasing the video and from this that'll be posted to YouTube and shared on Canvas. And then similarly, we will be sending out all the slides from today's, which there's a lot of technical information, a lot of links in these slides. So it's going to be a very handy resource moving forward. If you have any trouble at all, feel free to message myself or Allison in the chat. I think Candace, who's actually off today, but is joining us just the same. If you have any issues, feel free to message one of us. We've got pizza emojis in front of our names. It's a good way to know when somebody's a member of the Shareable team. And we'll be having multiple opportunities for questions throughout the session, but we'll also stick around at the end for a few minutes if there's other questions you have about this subject matter, about libraries of things in general, about the collab, about Shareable. We're here to discuss. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Amanda Miller, who is a returning presenter to lead today's session.
Thank you, Tom. And yes, shout out to Asheville and everybody that's working to make things better. Grew up in the Great Dismal Swamp and have sat under tables through Category 5 hurricanes. It is not fun, and that is not an experience I am jealous of today. But we do have just a ton of information that I wanted to share with you guys. So thank you for joining us. Obviously, we're talking about fundraising, grants, identification, tracking, and reporting. I am, again, maybe, will my slides go? Can we go that way? How about this way? All right, good enough. Okay. My name is Amanda Miller. I use she, her pronouns. And I'm the executive director of the South King Tool Libraries. Over the past 7 years or more, I've worked with every level of government, dozens of businesses and institutions, and just countless people supporting the operations of our now two locations in South King County, Washington. Two unique circumstances. I won't go into details about those today because we have a lot of ground to cover. So I've been here. Today, I'm going to share more about grants, and that also means partnerships, data, challenges, balance, and by looking cumulatively at the identification, tracking, and reporting processes. I will go on tangents, side quests, bear with me, but I'll try to get through as much as I can. And then if you do have time at the end to stick around and have more questions, write them down, put them in the chat, we can come back. Everybody hear me okay? Everything was good to go? You guys got that? All right, awesome. This is not a comprehensive grant writing workshop. This is not a how-to. This is a best information that I have from my experiences. That's what I have available, and I hope maybe it could be helpful to you or you in the future or someone else in your organization. So first and foremost, there we go. I didn't find one for Asheville, but I'm fully in it. I truly believe that tool libraries and libraries of things have the power to transform the world. We're not just resources. We are vibrant hubs. We spark sustainability, foster connections, reduce waste, and promoting sharing. We can revitalize the neighborhoods around us and far beyond. And many of us even offer workshops, events, classes, and all to just help folks gain new skills, build relationships. And our organizations can apply for grants to help showcase these tools. Programs like lending, repair, can champion environmental stewardship and enhance community engagement, all while providing the affordable access to tools and essential resources, just like we're talking about with the hurricane today. So by highlighting their positive impact on the planet and residents' lives, applications can demonstrate the value of funding these vital initiatives. We can amplify the role of lending libraries as gateways to the broader sustainability movements, showing funders how the investment can create lasting benefits and the community can align with their goals for a more sustainable future. Powerful vision of the tool library and libraries of things as catalysts for community transformation and sustainability is inspiring, but it gets us to where we are today and the important question about how these initiatives can sustain themselves and grow. This brings the crucial crossroads that nonprofits face with funding, right? See, that way. All right. So to get started, I'm going to talk about identifying. Identifying suitable grants is the crucial starting point for the community organization to navigate some funding dilemmas. Aligning your funding with your mission, organizations match and maintain their integrity while maximizing their impact through very targeted approaches. Hopefully I can help you understand grant requirements, navigate some of the potential restrictions and issues that can arise, talk a little about strategic partnerships, and look at the funders in that way as well. They can share your vision, or maybe they just don't know that they do that yet. Ultimately, the diverse funding streams, including well-matched grants, enhances your organizational sustainability, provides stable support while staying true to your community focus. It's not all roses. There are tough times, tough grants, and tough goals. All right. Key is finding balance. Just that easy. To make the best choices, you got to get back to your core mission, figure out what your goals and needs are, ensure that any potential partnerships or funding sources really align with your values and support what you're all about. Now, your goals and needs need to be clearly outlined before you seek funding. Clear objectives can help you guide the search and help you secure the resources specifically for those goals. Your aims might include community engagement, program expansion, staff benefits, but remember that the operational costs are essential too. Funders may not align perfectly with your goals. Don't give up. Instead, think about adapting your communication strategies to highlight the impact and the value of your work. If you've got clear goals, you know your values, and you can be patient, terribly patient, grants and strong partnerships can really help you succeed. They will be frustrating, they will be arduous, and sometimes they will also be enraging. So get a really good meditation practice or maybe a blood pressure cuff in your inventory. All right. All right, if you're thinking about applying for grants, period, any kind of grant, it's important to know what you want to achieve and why. It can be tough. If it's your first time dealing with grants, here is my number one, very best tip. Write this down if you're writing things down. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Local groups, similar organizations, the people in your peer group right here are going to have different experiences from you. Across the country, even across the world, we can all share useful information. It's worked well and what hasn't in the past. For bigger goals, it also helps to create at least a basis summary, a budget, an outline, do surveys, create a community group, committees, of course. Working on this can help you get input from the community and be more inclusive to reflect who you really want to serve. I love this survey because there's always the one guy that says, no, I'm not going to borrow tools. I'm like, okay, thank you for taking the survey then. So there's a lot on this page here. So you have a big checklist in front of you. You can also be really thorough, you know, getting a single page executive summary, directive summary is one thing. You can also get further down the line and create much more extensive plans. But at very least, you do need to get some of these fundamental documents for your project aligned. We'll put this and send this guys out to you all. So I have some really great drafts and examples you're welcome to utilize. Use existing templates, recycle your language, proofread, acknowledge your weaknesses too, so that you don't end up tripping over yourself or saying the wrong name to the wrong grantor. You're unsure about numbers, technical writing, get feedback, ask folks for help, be specific in your ask. If you have no idea where to start, just pick one. The best bet here, what I would say is an inevitability, is having your mission, vision statements, and organizational data. And what I mean by that is simply your mailing addresses, your EIN numbers, your maybe your charitable certification letter from the Secretary of State. All of this can help you see what you qualify for in a precursory way. These aren't required. This is not comprehensive. This is thanks to some really amazing folks at a local organization called Inclusive Data and some other places that I pulled different information from. There's also free templates, Canva docs for budgets and LOIs. And then, the other place to really start would be a calendar. The next slide, I think, is what I wanted to show you guys. You can see it might be kind of tiny. We'll send this to you, don't worry. The columns you want to have in a great effort to look at grants comprehensively would be notating things like the organization that you're going to pursue, a little summary maybe of the opportunity that you're considering, contact information, the amount that they might award, if there's a deadline that you know of, and then any other notes that you have. This is a pretty extensive document that has also included things like the last time we reviewed those available funds and the owner of those things, because I do have a few folks always working to maintain some funding strategies. So having a great delegation method can help everyone along the way. But I wanted to make sure to give you guys some kind of templates for this. So, all right. Now this section is supposed to be about identification. And I just gave you a big laundry list. Don't go away. Don't go start doing those things. We have more to cover. So bear with me. Research, of course, is the biggest part of identification. You have to research inward what your goals and values and needs are, but then you're going outward. So spending the good time of researching and developing the funding resource relationships can really make or break a project and program appeal. So finding the good fit and then getting you started with looking at the right tools to find those fits. So some databases can be searched in the way that would help answer some of your immediate questions and others can't. So let's look first at the types of grants, right? This is what people think of a lot of the time when you talk about grants, and they're like, great, that's just amazing magical money that just rains from the heavens, which just not the case at all. But maybe you have a tethered relationship with government as well. They can be pretty complicated. There's a lot of different ways to talk about researching these grants. So let's look at the foundation for using the databases to help you navigate that. The breakdown here between these different entities is obvious. You have the federal, state, local, and that means, by that I mean counties, cities, other municipalities. And within those, they each have their own departments, divisions, and ways of appealing for funding. You have capital funding requests, you have lots of different branches of state governments, and then sometimes they can actually cross-pollinate each other. So each of these comes with their own brand of difficulty. Things like regionality, match requirements, disbursements. I have a very long list of very complaining words, and I won't read them all to you, but they have their good points and their bad points. So you want to be aware how some of those can be impacting your appeal, and maybe why they would be more attractive than some would be attractive versus others. The big parameters that fall into these categories are obviously their region that they are serving. So that's one thing to always consider. But then there's a lot of other priorities for funding. And then there's also things that you might not think you could pursue funding through. Things like tribes, service clubs, churches, they have a lot of opportunities to bring funds from alternative resources that might have less deliverable and strategic alignments that could be a better fit for your project. So all of these things, it's a lot of information. As you're approaching your project, who you could potentially partner with really can span the whole breadth of this. As you start to research, you will narrow your focus because there are a lot of disqualifiers as well. It's a lot of information. That said, add another layer of complexity to it. The types of grants that folks are funding can be dependent on what they are wanting as outcomes. And by that, I mean the way that we have structured some government organizations, they're looking for deliverables and outcomes that align with things that they might not fully understand. Hopefully no one's here that's going to be offended by that, but they will have a, this is how we've done it kind of approach to things. And then there's a, this is how you could do it. I included this little graphic here because I thought it was interesting that there, was not 8 years ago a lot of talk of circular economy, and tool libraries weren't on the radar of a lot of government institutions. So we were actually under a grant agreement that was waste to resources public participation under the Department of Ecology for Washington State and the solid waste. I can't see anyone's eyes rolling, but I want to roll my eyes at that. So that said, the different types of grants are going to depend on the different divisions and expectations and outcomes for programs and for the entities that you're applying through. So keep that in mind if you can, but also expand your mind. We'll give you some more insight onto why that's complex. For example, the EPA might have a grant that funds a department in Washington State that then would fund a county program that goes to the city level. So you can see how many people might touch that and how complex it might be. All right, more of a bunch of links. So when you're seeking the grants, it's important to have access to the most comprehensive and up-to-date information available. Funding opportunities change pretty readily. And fortunately, there's a lot of free resources available. They're designed to help organizations like yours, and they are, I wouldn't say readily available, but they are somewhat accessible. These resources can help you streamline, save time, and increase the chances that you can secure funding. These are obviously going to change and vary from region to region. These are the most national programs that I could find, and ones that I was most familiar with. So grants.gov, obviously government grants, and the FDO is a really great resource that may be accessible free to you locally. If you get this link for candid.org/find us, you would be able to have free access to that through usually a library or other resource near you. Apparently everything is Candid now. So Grant or GuideStar is now Candid, and Candid also runs Philanthropy News Digest. If you don't do anything else with this slide, subscribe to this newsletter because they're going to be sending out information about grants pretty readily. So another note that I have down here is some of the other direct sources that you could go to would be those divisions in your governments, in your municipalities that have grant information coming through the pipeline. And another, some people don't necessarily think about is actually your delegates, your legislative representatives, and the elected officials will occasionally have really great resources, and at very least can supply you with letters of support, or they should supply you with letters of support. So just something to keep in your pocket. Of course, there's also paid resources. Tread lightly here. They can be, again, all of these resources can be really cumbersome, but you can get training on how to use them more effectively too. They also might not be that cumbersome if you're a person that's really familiar with databases or really confident in navigating some of these spaces. So you'll be able to search by data types, sometimes with regional specificities, sometimes by funding amount, previously funded projects, also great. And yes, that's why I highlighted TechSoup. Yes, you can get a lot of really great discounts. If you're not already on TechSoup's link, then please get with them. They have software, hardware, and other discounts for nonprofits. I added the other line too about libraries, associations, and chambers, because some of these entities will do a group purchase of these subscriptions so that their members can have access. And sometimes it does cost to be members to those institutions. So something to keep in mind as well. All right. And then warnings. I'm not speaking too much from a trauma perspective, but more of a, I want to help you guys in the future. There's warnings for organizations to pursue applications and really along the whole way. So just be prepared and ask for help, right? Requirements for matching funds, tapering of multi-year grants, mandatory gap years between grant applications, and withholding or delayed reimbursements are not uncommon. Even before that, though, including certain things in your grant application can be complete deal breakers. So having said that, there is not an expansive list about what those are. I am here today to be that voice in your head that says, they're writing this into this RFP. I need to maybe define and look up what they mean by that, because it might be the difference between a pass fail or a lot of points. So in your research, take note of obviously due dates, local time zones relative to that, the funding timelines and how it corresponds to maybe their fiscal years and processing. And then previously funded amounts are the best sort of indicator on how to gauge if you can't find a lot of substance on that information. So funding availability is another one. You know, there's a pool of money and you can have a lot of people trying to drink from the pool, so it might dry up. So take those things into consideration when you're applying for grants. And then if you're offered technical assistance, I put it big because it is great. It's a wonderful thing. Don't sleep on technical assistance that can help you with application, with deliverables, and really make the difference between success and failure. Don't feel foolish or like you are asking dumb questions. There's a lot of just very good people working to support folks. So, and don't forget that you're a business. You know, you can apply for small business grants. You are available to receive small business supports like through those entities, libraries, or associations. So don't discount those as well. The other thing that's really important that can bring in a lot of depth is partnerships. Partnering with very experienced organizations that have handled a lot of grants in the past, or partnering with the folks that your funders want to connect with, who they aim to uplift, can be an equitable and substantial way to make your grant application and fulfillment successful. So don't discount that. Plus, your funders are future partners. So, you know, don't discount the fact that you want to have the long-term relationship with someone that might be willing to invest in your projects. I grabbed some from my friends at the Content Makers Hub because they've done a really great job of spreading out different partnerships, and some from my friends at the Northeast Seattle Library, just to show that, you know, there's no cap or angle that you have to make to doing some partnerships. They can be more hands-on or hands-off. And then the other one is a little snippet from the Department of Ecology that's worked with my organization and how they're, you know, benefiting mutually from our benefit as well. So enhancing your services, enhancing your reach, helping to fill gaps as well. So lots of information, and there's way more words on this slide too. Don't worry, I put these here so you can have them later. You don't even look at them; they'll just stress you out. No, there's a lot of acronyms. There's a lot of words. Just keep in mind your capacity to manage the varying levels of commitment. Invest time and energy into fulfilling partnerships, and make grants extension of those. And then invest your time into having a good basis. I also threw in here just notes that it couldn't really fit anywhere else, and I wanted to make sure to add those in for folks because there's just so many things that I wish I would have known, and I want to make sure that you know. And then lastly, just don't be intimidated by a big name or a really large RFP. It's not going to be the end of the world, and it's not going to be something that you can't ascend. So don't let that be the hard stop. So, all right, I'm gonna stop. Oh, no, one more thing. That's right. You're really crippled by decisions because executive dysfunction, like overstimulation, I'm there. Make a little decision tree. It is so helpful to just be able to say, well, does this go into my decision tree bucket if I want to apply for it? Yes or no? And if you can't do that, bring in more people that can help you do that. So check in and balance. I also added more notes here because as I was going through, I was like, oh, yeah, don't forget. So more verbiage will come up that you might not be familiar with. Don't let that, again, catch you by surprise. But do check because those are, I want to say, and it's like quicksand in the forest where, having required matches or reimbursement periods can be the difference between your ability to make payroll from month to month. So, and then over here on the left, which is too small for you guys probably to really read, but it's really encouraging to just look at previously funded projects for these larger institutions because it shows that there are people like you and me that have received funding and support. So it should just give you a boost of confidence to look, there's actually 3 or 4 tool libraries on that list from the Department of Ecology. And I'll send a link with that so you guys can take a look. But I want to pause for just a second. And I know there's like way more stuff that I could have iterated on or expanded on or make it
Yep.
fit. So questions?
Yep. So any questions so far around any of the kind of technical stuff around types of grants and initial kind of process for preparation for applying? Um, Also, if anybody, we've had a lot of folks that have been running tool libraries for a number of years that are on here as well. And if you want to pop in and just give a quick, um, tell a quick story about any type of a grant process that you went through right now, um, we're also open to hearing that real quick.
Tammy's existential question of what if we are somehow that institution? Explain, my friend.
Oh man. Okay, this aligns with some of the stuff that's been going on with the Tool Library Alliance and um, I guess questions that we've been discussing here in Washington, but could there be an overarching, more collaborative approach to going for grants? Could there be an entity? I mean, I think Shareable is very, very much aligned in this way that we don't have to do this alone. I mean, communities of learning are great, but if we could build on that and actually be developing shared resources and shared infrastructure, it sure seems like it could be game changing for a lot of the smaller entities, the startup groups, in addition to groups that have more experience. Was that a sufficient explanation?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it I know Cami pretty well, and what she's referring to is that we're trying to begin a national to library alliance for the first time that I am aware of. And there's a lot of collective effort regionally to align and work towards funding strategies. My experience with this, I guess, is I've looked at a lot of things with the lens of what's been done in the past, what has happened, what's come before this, and I've looked at things like service groups, national groups like or international that do a lot of different functions, and they share a lot of elements of their both funding approaches as well as resource sharing. So I don't think we need to. I think personally don't reinvent the wheel when it comes to these things, but I think it's difficult because we are approaching things so in so many different areas that it's niche wise. But I mean, using things like fiscal sponsorships with partners and using these national programs can only benefit us. Even just this approach where Shareable is bringing all of us together has really facilitated the trajectory of a national alliance. So, Tom, what do you think?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I think that there's a place for it, but I think one of the other parts that was not necessarily addressed in that question is then, you know, if and when we are in the power to decide, how do we decide where funding goes? And, you know, it's the if you if you've ever been put in a position to make decisions about who gets grants and who does not get grants, you get a better view on the review process of your reviewer. So, you know, Shareable, we've been, over the years, we've given micro grants for various projects. We've also participated in a grant circle that was funded by a foundation that a whole lot of organizations were participating in, and had to have those deep conversations, how you evaluate a project, you know, how you create those metrics. And those experiences have definitely helped me. They've also it's been a double-edged sword, as you say, because it's helped me get a better idea of what it takes to apply for a grant, but it also has made me sometimes overthink applications because of having gone through that process as well. So it goes both ways. But that is the other thing to think about is, yeah, like if you were in their shoes, what would you want to read? What would be the thing that would make
Yeah.
you more likely to give funding to a project?
Yeah, and it is a lot of putting yourself into the funder's shoes to make it mutually beneficial. I will say too, with a lot of these large institutions, we have a lot of hangups as activist people and community-based people, and rightfully so. They are approaching this in a better way by taking feedback. So I have a little bit more about that in a little while, how to engage with the funders to make it more productive for folks. But to your point too, Tom, that I'm not jealous of these folks that are weighing and measuring and putting these good do-gooders against each other to get this funding. But it also is part of why we should pursue funding so we can make the case. So that ruins one of my points later, so I'm not going to come back. I will come back to that later. But yeah, and creating the entity that facilitates, of course, yeah, those databases, these cohesive hubs, and not being redundant, not trying to reinvent the wheel. So sharing, go figure, all of these. But yeah, good question. Thanks, Cami. I appreciate you. All right, shall we go on? Lots more to cover here. I have tiny spreadsheets, guys, so don't laugh. I just more am putting them on there for visual complexity. But let's get into data and some examples, ideas, and even apple pie. Down here at the bottom, we have some of our EPA delivery schedule and a proposal. And then I thought the picture was really interesting because I'm looking at both qualitative and quantitative data. So yeah, just it's funny to me, sorry. Yeah, so congratulations, you have decided to apply for a grant. I love this quote, it's always in my head, but it's not mislabeled. I promise we're going to be talking about data, and yes, I say congratulations because it is a big deal. You're starting to discuss tracking at this point because you haven't even finished applying for a grant. If you identify the grant, then you're just going to begin to look at what you're going to put into the grant. With that basis that you already have established in your practice of maybe writing everything down or trying to find a good way to wrap your arms around all the data that you probably have and just don't have cohesively, you're really still inventing that universe. You're still on the point of inventing the universe for the apple pie that you'll create. So you need to talk about the real things that aren't real yet, which is data of your future projects. So when you think of the data, it's actually a story. Organizations service, your metrics, your quantitative, qualitative data, going into how you convey yourself to the public and the funders and explain what you actually do. So you have to set yourself up for success, write it down, get a person that's in record management or really passionate about note-taking, reporter even, for every event, put value on all your efforts so that you can have some good baseline. Effective tracking keeps up with your reporting, but it also helps prevent missed opportunities. It presents good feedback and goal setting, and it helps improve not just one grant success, but really makes you likely to receive more support in the future. All right, so isn't this pretty? Look at these pretty spreadsheets and pretty things. When you're completing your grant application or participating in even just the information sessions, which yes, Tom, perfect. Yes, sometimes they're recorded. Sometimes you can have office hours with folks to do it all. You need to make a note to yourself. You can help to learn from the funder what's beneficial for them to consider with your data in mind. Consider software, consider the elements that you have already at your hand, like software, digital marketing, community engagement, your core operations, and how those might align with grant objectives that you're pursuing. So in addition to that, it's essential to understand the needs of the funders and how the initiatives can assist them in achieving their goals, why they wrote the grant in the first place, would be beneficial overall. I'd like to emphasize that the previous points on are pretty intentional. I can confidently say that grants that we applied for 8 years ago did not explicitly mention lending programs or tools or anything like that. Instead, we had to construct a compelling case. We had to demonstrate how the functionality of the tool lending and operation of the tool library could fulfill the specific needs that funders wanted to fund. And we had to be innovative. You had to be, looking at things somewhat unconventionally. But that's how we get creative. So be creative, have adaptive thinking. It can also be challenging because why should you look at something that's not like the way that it's worded in the grant? But those risks, those opportunities can really bring meaningful change. And I think that where grants have moved to, I'm not saying it was just us, but where they've moved to in the past 5 years is a pretty good indication of that. And on your screen are some really neat things. On the left, the Buffalo, or the tool library of Buffalo has a beautiful report. That's wonderful to share with everyone, including your participants. On the bottom, you guys might recognize some of those pop outs from my turn. And then Scotland, just like eons ahead of it with some really amazing impact and data metrics. I kind of have it all covered up here because I don't want you guys to focus too much on these things. On the right too, it's just some of our tracking, our raw data for our outcomes in any given period that we needed to track in order to get a report on or to have talking points. So another point I like to bring up is oh, go ahead.
I was about to say that your audio had gotten pretty rough, and then as soon as I stepped in and said a noise, your audio got clear again.
I'm sorry. It's probably because I'm in our other location, which is in a mall, which is weird. So bear with me.
I can hear you just
guys.
fine now, so we'll just try to keep it going.
All right. Okay. All right. It's important to note that the grant contracts typically include a negotiation phase after you are awarded those. So if your funding is partial or if your needs allocations, they vary across different tasks or outcomes, approach the process carefully. Once you submit your proposal, outlines the commitments to the funding organization and they agree to the proposal, but reduce budget or changing some of the terms, make sure, and you are entirely entitled to negotiate and revise those deliverables and outcomes. It's worth remembering that while the organizations may be large and staffed by faceless boxes at times, they are still people. They're individuals who understand that it's a negotiation process and that you are also an organization that is working to succeed. So they do not want you to fail. They don't want to make things more difficult for you. Most of the times what I've found is that they just want you to be able to do what you need to do while they also can have the outcomes that they expect. So back to tracking. Determine, if you can, before your grant submission, that your software and hardware needs are either met or what you might need to fulfill those, because you can actually include those in your grant budget. It is really, really smart to do that. You have CRM software, you have payroll software, but you don't need to make it more complex if you don't have that burning desire or that requirement from the institutions. You basically want to make sure that the transparency is available for them to clearly tell you what expectations are needed for things like payroll journals or documentation backups for invoicing. Things you might want to consider, of course, are the comprehensive pieces that would make your life easier. And I have longer lists. I'll add those to the presentation and make sure that they go out to you guys, because there's just some ideas about what you could add and make your lives easier. But it doesn't mean that it's a shoe-in. What is this one called? Oh, Salesforce is really popular, and it is a bear to put your arms around. So using things like TechSoup to get the discounts for nonprofits, using free resources that are available as well, can really make a change for quality and deliverables. The other thing is to consider what could automate your processes or optimize your specific needs, and then create accessibility, because that should always just be part of nonprofits work. All right. Double verify with your grantor on acceptable tracking and reporting expectations, and ask for help just sooner than later, because you can always, I say always with the caveat of not always, but if you approach it early enough, adjusting your outcomes and deliverables is not off the table. Make sure that you understand all of these terms and you have these as paramount roles in your folders for these grants, because not having the contact information for a grant manager is not going to be a reason for a delay in your reporting or your deliverables. Making sure that you don't miss or exceed milestones is, again, another reason for you to potentially go back and make sure that you need to check in with folks and set yourself up for success by having checks and balances in place with either committees in your organization or just partners that can hold you accountable to doing small things. So clarifying your view of what the grant and expectations and relationship needs, it's just like any relationship, it's going to make it better. So let's see. All right, and then working with the grantor, make sure you have a good understanding. I'm just keep saying this over and over again. But when that comes to tracking what exactly you're reporting and how they are going to receive those things, what information you can get from the software and hardware or calculations that you have in place. So again, going back to these processes of being precise, trying to make sure that you're not overstating or understating your expected outcomes and future goals, because you don't want to have folks, saying that you had no perception of how the outcomes would truly be met when you're 500% over your deliverables. Having a great barometer on that is going to make or break the cycle for you to at least receive renewal of funding or another appeal. And then making sure that you're not hit by a bus and everything falls apart. That sounds extreme, but things happen. You never know. You need to have other people with the ability to also create and pick up those relationships if anything might happen, or again, those balances, so that you're not the only person responsible and taking a look at things. And then don't wait until the 13th hour or the last week of the quarter or the end of the year to verify that you're on track to meet your goals. Optimize all of the things that you can to make your life easier, and use tools that are not just established, but things that you think might be helpful. You'd be surprised how many folks would be willing to help you when it comes to these larger institutions, not just on technical assistance, but making sure that you can revise things that are submitted or amend things that are maybe uploaded improperly. So it's not a deal breaker if you screwed up once or twice. Okay. All right, reporting. This section is short because we've already talked about how
I
to
was
set
say
yourself up.
before you jump ahead,
Yeah.
can you just actually just pause for a minute and talk about some of the things that you have tracked on previous grants, just to kind of ground it a little bit in a previous case study?
Yeah, so this is a great snapshot here. I don't know if you guys can see this because this is actually a small section of that, but I was telling Tom I was not going to really give too many specifics because it's entirely dependent on what your relationship is to the funder. But as examples for what we are going to do as libraries of things, memberships, checkouts, tools, tonnage, participants, even embodied carbon. I'm just looking at that. This very multicolor spreadsheet is one of our summary spreadsheets that was still from a few years ago, but this isn't the finalized summary output. And what it does is it allows us to look at different events, different engagements, and then look at what the quantifiable data was for those engagements, and then really what grants do those apply for. We have things split out by quarter because a lot of our funding cycles punctuate at the quarter ends, of course, and they don't ever line up really nicely. So I have a lot of colors in a lot of different spreadsheets that distinctly call out different items. There's also a level of tasks to the grants themselves. So this smaller spreadsheet, which is a little blurry, I apologize, is actually deliverables from grants from our past. So you have a goal that has a due date, and you have the number that correlates to that. A lot of grantors have very specific verbiage and formatting to be able to attribute those metrics and data. So volunteers is another one that we have reported on. And the point with all of that is that all of the tracking that we do, if I am logging all of my volunteers' names and their hours and the days that they work, I can use that data point a million times, because you're talking about value added to your programs, maybe the different grants that could fund them, and then the logic and the information that folks are learning and sharing as well. So I keep feeling I keep saying don't discount these things, but you look at the data points really as the storytelling devices, and how you can spin it sounds like the wrong thing, but it is, because if you're not going to do it, somebody else will. And spinning it is really what storytelling is about. You let your own barometer be what that should look like. So does that help a little bit? And I see there's some questions, but I don't want to go over time too much, and I want to get to this. Is that okay, guys?
Yeah, then you can keep rolling.
All right, cool. All right, so we're at grant reporting and we have like no time left, but that's okay because we've already set yourself up for complete success. This is going to be a breeze. It's totally fine. I have some examples up here because there's a lot of different types of reporting in different funding categories that you might need to look at. It's like training for a marathon. Your work in the grant period is the most important part. So if you laid the groundwork effectively, this will be easy. And if you didn't, it'll probably be okay too. So congratulations again. Now you get to do the work. Outcomes and deliverables are what people generally use. There's just a million different words for these different things. So you need to make sure that all of these alignments in your mind and in your approach to tracking them is going to line up in your report. That's the basis of a report. You should be able to take that information and do that pretty well. Things like grantor agencies and turnover within those programs, or system updates, or internal changes in your organization really need to be considered when it comes to reporting, because they can make a little bit of a difference on how you need to format things too. Don't assume you know what they say about that. And here are a few different types of reports that you might want to consider. Obviously, these are very high level definitions of reports. Obviously, we're talking about finances, progress, and final reports. The reason that final is so important is that that is your that's your calling card. That's going to be the last impact and phase that you have with the organization or the funder in the long term. I have more specifics on how these might break down, but tracking your cash flow, invoices, manifest, delivery of goods, documentation and backups, clearly defining what those are, and make sure, you know, double dipping. There's a lot of questions in nonprofits when you start to expand about how you delineate between programs. So having those policies set forward even, which may be a prerequisite for some of these grants, you need to take that into consideration. All right, let's go. Big old spreadsheet. This is an example of a very old grant that we had. And I just wanted to show you the breakdowns here. You have tasks. There's 2 tasks, and then within those tasks are different programs, and then within those programs are different categories, and then different task categories and items require different backups as well. This might be illegible to some, but this is an example of a timesheet for some of the grants as well. So just going again to show how the breakdowns need to sometimes correlate to different tasks and subcategories. So tracked and summarized all the quantitative and qualitative data because you need that non-numerable data as well. Even those can be deliverables when it comes to participant satisfaction and the change making that we are trying to make. I say that in air quotes because what is the real impact of things? You're making a case for it again. So you don't have a lot of good data on how that could work. Again, speaking in generalities, it's hard to put exacts on these things. And then I have an excerpt there from one of our grants. There's 11 separate worksheets just for one grant. So you need to kind of have an upfront understanding of what the reporting and outcomes will be before you're investing and committing to some time for grants, because you can get just throttled by paperwork and hoops. All right. Summary of tools and tips. Maintain your records, pay attention to the details on your reports and in your agreements, collecting the data and the stories continuously. I'm not going to read this slide to you, but the point was just do it. Just start, just try, because I bet that there will be people that are going to support you and help you through the process. And that if you don't just stop the program that you are pursuing funding for, that you will succeed and that it'll just work out fine. I hear a lot of people with hesitations about doing larger scale grants, and their idea is that somehow these are punitive or would come back, and there is accountability associated with grants, but there's not it is far less of a you're not robbing a bank, you're not doing anything that's exploitative, and really you're utilizing the balance that is in place. So all right, that was a lot. Here's my recap. Make sure it fits, find it and make that easy on yourself, align yourself, apply with confidence and competitive approaches, and then negotiate. Don't forget that that is a process. Of course, you're going to complete the project. You set yourself up for success by doing all of the other parts. So that's my recap of things. Boom. All right. Yes, overhead. Whew. Indirect costs, overhead, magic words. I had so many magic words that I was like, I need a thesaurus and a reference sheet for all of these things. And then it got to be a really long presentation. So, all right. There we go. Questions? I feel like I should say ta-da. I don't know.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot there.
Yeah.
and it's because it's definitely, it's not a simple process, right? It is something that
Yeah.
you, like you were saying, you have to go in with your eyes wide open, and oftentimes, you know, you want to make sure that the grant you're going after does really fit with your work, which I think that Kate made the point about that earlier as well, right?
Well,
Um,
and then the other
and
point is
and
that operation, yeah, yeah,
yeah, I was
operations
gonna
aren't
say exactly
fundable.
that.
It's just not fundable.
Yep,
It's not.
yep.
It's this quagmire. I was talking to someone, and I was just in an interview um with Laura for Untangling Circularity, and I said I think that nonprofit is the most difficult way to run a business. I think that's like just the definition that I'm going to go with because
No,
you have this balance of you know not just your personal values that obviously you have when you have run a nonprofit, but because of the way that you're pursuing funding in all of these other ways. So it makes it hard, but it also gives you a lot of opportunities to expand into spaces where you don't might not necessarily see that there is a need. So, you know,
to say
don't
two
change your
other,
mission and
yeah,
visions, but yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I was saying, and definitely there is an opportunity to partner with other organizations, locally, regionally on grants where there can be shared programming, and those applications can be much stronger. And the
But there's
other
also
thing,
boundaries of regionality, right? We were just
yep,
talking about.
sure, yeah, yeah. Well, but I think, but when you look at roles and everything else, like you can navigate some of those things.
Absolutely.
Another piece is that private foundations often have separate buckets between their granting funds and their sponsorship funds. And we typically think of sponsorships as being corporate, but uh, but independent foundations also offer sponsorships. I will say that we have used that to get a foothold into various foundations to build relationships over the years, where it maybe we'll start with like a $5,000 sponsorship for a program that we're running, where we're bringing in other funds from different locations as well. And it might, and in those cases, we've had a much faster turnaround time. We've been able to, by doing
Well,
some
yeah, because
searching, in
it's that
GrantStation or everything
relationship
else.
building.
Yep.
Yeah, foundations are all about relationships and building those relationships. And there's, a disparity, I believe, if I can just, put that in
Mhm.
there, because that's not a lot of circles that people that don't look like you and me can be in, and
Yep.
that's not fair, that's not right. But the culture around that can change as well, because you can go for different ways of approaching these things. So those partnerships, yeah, those initial forays into sponsorship, or even just press and attention, highlighting that you got a grant and funding, and like calling out your good work. Yeah, just write a put that. I mean, AI, just use the AI and write a press release and send it to the newspaper, because they want a picture and they want the words, and they will, they can put it out there, or you put it out there
Yep.
on a video, and people get picked up all the time.
Yep.
But don't be ashamed of your good work. That's crazy.
Yep. So storytelling is also a big piece. So it's the storytelling on the grant reports, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
storytelling in public, and creating sharing praise for funders, for participants, for everybody involved, and showing that whatever it is that you're doing is indeed a community effort, as it is, and bringing in those allies. Who are those different allies that are supporting that work as well, can also be very helpful. Um, I do want to just point out we are at time. Thank you for sticking around for a couple of minutes extra. As I mentioned before, and was mentioned throughout this session, we've been recording everything. We're going to share this video recording. We're going to share the slide deck with all of the amazing links that Amanda has included in there. And then we also be sharing a written transcript of this session as well. Those pieces will be coming out within the next week, and we will send an email to everybody that registered for this session with the links to be able to get that, which will be up on Canvas as everything goes up on Canvas.
Can
So
I
I do really
can
want
you
to. Yep. Yep.
can you share my my speaker notes too? Just because if I got cut off in some of the blurby
Yes.
things
So the
that way.
speaker notes
Okay,
are all on the slide deck.
perfect. Yeah.
When you get a copy of the slide deck, if you go down to the bottom, this is a Google slide deck. There are speaker notes at the bottom. They're very comprehensive. And if there are pieces that were missed out, we'll be able to find the most of what Amanda presented is included in those speaker notes.
Just in case it wasn't quite articulated. So thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right. So just gonna, bless the release, folks. If you need to jump onto something else, feel free to jump away, and we'll keep the room open for another few moments in case there's additional questions or stuff you want to discuss. And
Thank you
otherwise,
guys
we
for
will be
your
back
time.
here. We'll be back here on the second Tuesday of November, and we'll be sending out details about that session very soon. Oh, and one more update. So we've been turning the first 12 sessions that we did as the collab before we've been doing this continuing education work into version 2.0 of the Library of Things toolkit. So that is being written and graphically put together and everything as we speak. And we will be releasing that in early December. So stay tuned for details. And it'll be the version 1.0. We'll be collecting different things from these continuing education sessions and other resources to add into a future version. But we'll be making sure we have a robust toolkit that everybody will be able to access before the end of the year. The Repair
Questions?
Economy Summit, that's the goal.
Nice. Yes. Great place to meet and connect with people that are maybe working on inspirational projects and
Yep.
all across the board. Yeah.
And there's going to be, so the virtual Repair Economy Summit will be taking place on the second Monday and Tuesday of the second week of December. And there will be more details coming about that soon. And we'll share that out across the December 9th and 10th. And we'll share that out with everybody who's registered for these sessions as well.